Members, I've had a number of requests, and some will be appearing before us. 2 declined and 1 withdrawn, and I'll just tell you the 2 declined are to Terence Harper representing the Takapuna Beach Business Association. It relates to item 10, the change of use proposed for Anzac Street, Takapuna, and also Ruth Jackson from the Takapuna Action Group regarding the same subject matter, and they've been declined on the basis that we've gone through a regulatory process, and I think that is a message that you'll be familiar with, that is conveyed when we undertake hearings of that and other sorts. And 1 request has been withdrawn, Mr. John Wood, and he was discussing the proposed development of a multi-storey car park on the Gasamara site. Mr. Wood couldn't find the time to attend, so he didn't want to talk about Anzac Street, but he has apparently distributed an email. 3 requests accepted.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just on the decline of the Takapuna Business Association and Ruth Jackson, while I appreciate that there has been a regulatory process that has gone through, it is not a regulatory process that we're considering today. And I would have thought that there was every prospect of the community having some input, in much the same way as the local board has input.
Thank you. I'm explaining, and I take your point, and I've already ruled on this, and I'm holding to that rule.
So what difference is there between the local board and the community?
There is quite a difference, actually. The local board is actually part of the council. So I'll go to that and have that question answered at the time from the staff, but that is as it is now. And 3 requests accepted. Christine Rose from the Public Transport Users Association to discuss trains to Huapai. Nick Reid and Bill Reid, unrelated, talking about the Albert Park Tunnels development proposal. And we'll have Denise Lee, MP, doesn't it rhyme well, former councillor, and MP Denise Lee is here to talk about the Unlock Panmure High Level Project Plan, and that is it on the public forum, and then we'll go to local board input. So let's take the public input right now. Christine, are you here, Christine? Christine Rose?
Mr. Chairman, I just noticed Christine hasn't arrived yet.
Okay,
I haven't been in contact with her, but perhaps if we could take her at the end if she arrives.
Yep, we'll go to the next.
Okay.
Nick Reid, I know, is here. Nick Reid, Bill Reid. Do you want to come up, Nick? And you've got your team as well. And that's with Bill Reid and Nick Andreff and Joe Edwards. But Nick, I'll let you introduce your team that have been working on this project.
Absolutely, thank you. So, control of the slides for us. Okay, thank you. So we're here to provide something of a briefing and an update for some of the members on the Albert Park Tunnels development proposal we've been working through. We've been proceeding on this for the last 12 months or so in earnest, so it's time to bring this to the committee and brief you all on it, hopefully. So, very quickly, who we are. I'm Nicholas Reid. I'm a transport planning consultant. I specialise in integrated public transport systems with walking and cycling. We also have Bill Reid, who's the head of this proposal. He's been advocating for public use of the tunnel complex since the 1980s, so he has a long history, probably knows more about these than any person on the face of the earth. We also have Nick Andreff, CEO of Waitomo Adventures, very experienced tourism operator, and also Joe Edwards, consultant specialising in tunnelling systems and construction. brief bit of background. What we're referring to is the complex of tunnels that sit underneath Albert Park, built as a series of air raid shelters. There's 3.5 kilometres of tunnels down there. Some of them are very large. You can see in the picture here, the main tunnel was actually designed large enough to drive supply trucks through. So these were built as air raid shelters in World War II. Thankfully, they were never used for the intended purpose, and shortly after they were decommissioned and backfilled. So they sit under there today, effectively full of clay blocks, and the entrances are sealed up. This illustrates the network of tunnels overlaid on today's city centre. So on the left there we have the core of the city centre around Victoria Street. The main complex sits under Albert Park itself, and there's a main tunnel that runs from Victoria Street right under Albert Park underneath the University of Auckland campus into the Elton Road Reserve, and it arrives at the corner of Beach Road and Churchill Street. So that's the part we're most interested in using. So to describe our proposal, it effectively has 3 components. The first is a transport tunnel, so that would be reopening the main tunnel as a walking and cycling link, and introducing a pair of elevator shafts to provide access up to the university. Together that would provide 4 entrances to the tunnel cutting across that hill and servicing access to the university, the city centre, Parnell and all points in between. So we describe it as something of a 4-station mini metro, but instead of metro vehicles you use your feet or a bicycle. In conjunction with that, we're proposing to open up parts of the tunnels for heritage and cultural spaces, so restoring elements of the tunnel complex to the original condition and preserving some parts in their current condition as well. In conjunction with that, we propose to introduce a lot of thematic elements into the complex, particularly around public art installations, lighting, to create an experience out of the complex rather than a mere tunnel. And the third element of that is a retail and tourism drawcard, so creating some spaces inside the complex for high-value retail food, beverage experiences, and some anchor tenants of tourism attractions, the number one being the Auckland glowworm encounter. This slide here just illustrates the concept for the transport tunnel. So it effectively, the tunnel is there, it cuts underneath the hill, and by using it and the access through the elevators, we can provide a missing link on a number of transport system, which is best illustrated in this. The main tunnel transport link is shown in pink with the 4 entrances as the dots. The green lines are the various current and proposed main cycling routes around the Auckland city centre. The yellow are the primary bus routes, and the red is the city rail link. So what the tunnel does is cuts across and connects all of these transport systems and effectively integrates them into one cohesive network. Fundamentally just overcoming the topological geographical constraints of the hill and providing access to the university that sits on that hill. This is another element there, drawing on that city rail link. This render shows the view from the main entrance of the city rail link onto Victoria Street. The reason I show this is the view we can see here is looking across 2 blocks of the Victoria Street linear park, and across those 2 blocks on the other side of the Queen Street Valley is where the entrance to the tunnel complex would be, and that would allow access into the tunnels, creating effectively a concourse for the station that makes Aotea Station the university station.
Put a car in that.
Indeed.
An electric car.
Perhaps.
Don't be such a Westie.
We could fit a lot of pedestrians too. Yes.
In a car. Don't need a car.
Electric petitions.
Carry on, Nick.
Yeah.
All right, sorry.
These are some
Good idea.
illustrations of some of what we've termed the high-value retailing opportunities. So Wine Cellar is an obvious fit with an underground environment, and we produce a lot of quality wine here in the Auckland region. Likewise with dairy products, Cheese Cellar, same thing. So we're envisioning a showcase of Auckland and New Zealand quality produce, and of course the cornerstone of the Auckland Glowworm Encounter. So the business model, we have shaped this as a commercially viable operation from the start. That has been our focus, where private investors fund the capital development against a long-term lease on the space. With that would come revenue streams to cover the operations and pay the return back to the private investors. So those revenue streams would come from a small user charge on the tunnel and the commercial leases on the tourism, retail and food beverage tenancies. The concept here is that it effectively pays for itself without major input or subsidy from the council, and in fact there would be a small ground lease paid back to the council or to the local board, as it may be, over time. I'll just move through the progress we've had to date, if we've got time for that still.
Maybe speed it up a little bit.
Certainly.
That would be good, Nick.
We've had a lot of planning and design inputs from a range of specialists there, and a lot of interest from potential funders. We have completed, or almost completed, draft feasibility study that effectively tells us this is a technically feasible proposition. The construction is relatively conventional and straightforward, and that the proposal is consistent with the range of strategies from the council family with regard to transport, tourism, economic development in the city centre. There are a range of issues we're aware of. There's very significant heritage considerations to work through. It's complex ownership, decision-making, stakeholder framework, and there is considerable investment needed to progress this through detailed design, resource consent type level of work. The business case we've completed shows capital costs in the range of 19 to 25 million for the complete complex against revenues of 1 to 2.5 million. So there's a lot to be worked out there, a lot of variables still, but this gives us the confidence that we have a potentially commercially viable proposal on our hands. So we're happy to take this forward to the next stage, and we don't think we're wasting anybody's time by doing this. And the last note there is that a lot of these benefits are externalised from the business case, if you will. They're really a big benefit for the city, for the university, for the people using it. We have undertaken a number of let's call them conversations rather than formal consultations with interested parties and other groups. So generally we've had a lot of support, a lot of general and principal support, particularly Waitemata Local Board, Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei, and ARTID, and a number of council groups, stakeholders, user groups. And I might add, the last point there, we have almost 10,000 Facebook followers, and that's just indicative of the very high level of public support for this project that's out there. People just seem to really like the idea, think it's a good idea. So our next steps, we're in a position where we want to move on to the next level of development and detail. We've completed the desktop assessments and we want to go further than that. So we would look to seek formal approval with appropriate conditions from the Waitemata Local Board as the primary landowner, and to arrange some sort of agreement to allow access to the tunnel complex for more detailed investigations. We've got a number of groups that we need to progress work streams with, and we have a program there of the various things we need to work through for that detailed planning consenting pathway.
Thank you, Nick.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Questions, members? Nick off.
Thank you very much, Nick and Bill and the team. I think it's a really exciting concept, and I think it brings real benefits to the city. You've got your next steps set out. You haven't set out a time frame. What do you consider as a viable time frame to commence and potentially conclude the work that needs to be done to make this a going concern?
Okay, well, if we work backwards a little on that, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, we have about a 6-month construction period in mind?
It's 6 months design first.
Yeah. So it'd be 6 months.
That's once the construction site has been set up down the bottom of Constitution Hill, using Church Street as an enter into Church Street from Beach Road and exit at Gittos Street. Yeah. Once that construction site is set up, which would take 2 to 3 months, then it would be a 6-month project to excavate the tunnels, line, seal, pave. Correct, Joe?
Yeah, in that order.
Thank you.
So the front end on that, the planning and design phase, we're probably looking at around 24-month program if we were to push play tomorrow.
Okay. So potentially within 3 years. And how solid are your funding sources?
I'm the one doing the funding sources. I've approached 2 international banks now. My solicitor is a partner in 3 major solicitors in Auckland. They have 5 private funders that my solicitor is overseas at the present moment, and I'm waiting for him to come back so that I can talk to his private investors.
Thank you very much.
So we have a lot of interest from the funding, but we need to move forward with something more concrete at this point. We're effectively still just in the good idea phase. Mm-hmm. So we're looking for an agreement or some sort of partnership, and then we can really bring those funders on board with something serious. Yes,
we need an agreement or something in place very similar with alterations to my original agreement, so that I can put this in front of investors to say, yes, we have something solid from Auckland Council to proceed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Walker.
Sure. Just to put the project in context, and I'm talking about a financial context, has there been any work done on what the value is of these tunnels in today's terms? And I'm thinking in terms of the CRL, which is costing us a small fortune to put a tunnel in place. And I guess that goes to the concept of sunk cost. We're already a long way there, and it might be of the order of hundreds of millions already.
Quite possibly. I mean, there is a lot of value in that, and a key point is that these tunnels, they do exist. This isn't really a tunnelling project. This is a rehabilitation of existing tunnels project. So that you're quite right. There's a lot of, let's call it sunk value in that complex. Our estimates are in the range of 3,000 to 4,000 users per day for university access alone. If you attempted to deliver something similar by building a new public transport system of equivalent capacity, you'd be looking into at least the tens, if not hundreds of millions, to deliver that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Cooper.
I get maybe this is a little bit too detailed, but I guess when you're talking about the fact that it's still owned by Auckland Council and there'd be a fee maybe through your hot card, etc., I guess at the end of the day, the maintenance costs would lie with council. Is that how you envisage it, or would it be part of the lease that you would be maintaining it?
So it would be, maintenance would be part of the operating company's responsibilities. So effectively those revenue streams pay for the operations and maintenance as well.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Clow.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a great idea, fantastic. No mention of the university. Have you consulted with the university?
Nicholas and I have met with Professor Stuart McCutcheon middle of last year, and also there was a representative from AUT, and we had their full support. Professor McCutcheon was quite concerned that the clock tower would collapse down into the tunnel, bearing in mind that this is a tunnelling process, that all the tops of the tunnels and possibly the sides of the tunnels have to be mesh lined and then shotcrete lined as well. So Professor McCutcheon, yes, we have had a meeting with him.
Thank you. And finally, Councillor Simpson.
Thank you. It looks as if I'm joining a long line of people who think this is a wonderful idea. Right. My question is a quick question and then a quick comment. Question is, do you foresee any problems in achieving your goal? And I'll ask that first, then I'll give a quick comment.
The only problem we have, Councillor, is getting that agreement in place.
The agreement to be able to do it, and that comes from the Waitemata Local Board. Okay. And my second thing is, with 10,000 likes on your Facebook page, I ask you potentially to consider crowdfunding once you've got your business case together.
It's an excellent idea and one we've been discussing. We're effectively waiting for the start of the new tax year to launch that endeavour.
We do have a very exciting crowdfunding project in mind, which we will discuss at a further date once we've got that agreement in our hand, and it does involve the clay blocks that are in there. The clay blocks that are inside the tunnel, there's 8.5 million clay blocks. If we get a 75% deterioration, we probably get 2,000 clay blocks out of there. I'd like to see those clay blocks fired, turned into bricks, and as non-constructional, use those clay blocks as paving stones to the entry to the tunnels, and also above an archway to the tunnels so that people are walking over, through and into history of our Auckland tunnels.
I think that's a fantastic idea. And Mr Chairman, just through you, I wouldn't mind an update when they have presented to the local board, just to know what local board's saying.
Okay. I'm proposing the motion that's before us, and I think the Mayor would like to move that.
I'll move accordingly.
Do I have a second?
Yep. I'll second.
Councillor Simpson, thank you. Gentlemen, thank you. This is without doubt a very interesting concept. Imagine walking from the city centre via this shortcut to the museum, let alone everything else in between the university, etc. Very interesting concept. Of course, you're bringing it here as on the premise that it's low or no cost to council. And so we're even more engaged on that. And we wish you well in progressing that business case further. And we'll have our staff work with you now on it, on the understanding that the resources mostly being applied from your side. And I think there's a great willingness to progress it that way. Any other speakers on that, members? Thank you very much. All those in favour say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Contrary, no. Declare that carried. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Councillor Darby. Thank you, Mayor Goff. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Is Christine here yet? Christine Rose? No, we'll go to our next presenter then, which is former councillor and now member of the Parliament, recently elected, not too recent now actually, Denise Lee. Welcome, Denise. Great
Welcome
to see
back.
you. Yeah. And firstly, Denise, you're back, and congratulations on your election to the Parliament of New Zealand. It's pretty neat to have one of us go there. Congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Mr Chair, and it's good to be back too. And I want to acknowledge you and your chairmanship, and of course that of Deputy Chair Richard Hills, who's on his honeymoon. I know there's an empty chair there for a good reason. Mayor and Deputy Mayor, greetings to you, and fellow former councillors. For those who I didn't get to see before the meeting started, special greetings to you. The rest of you I did get a quick hug in and enjoyed that. I appreciate the opportunity to come here and voice my support, Mr Chair, on behalf of the Unlock Panmure High Level Project Plan agenda item that's here today. Panmure, of course, actually before I do that I have left off one thing. It's a special lady's birthday today, Desley Simpson. I can't go by without remembering that little fact. Actually it's a big fact, so happy birthday Councillor Desley Simpson.
Thank
looking
you.
resplendent in blue over there.
That's for a change. Thank you.
she's smiling. I don't know if the cameras picked that up, but she is smiling. So look, I'd just like to voice my support for this particular project. Mr. Chair, Panmure has incredible natural features. For those of you who don't know the area, and I'm sure you do, between the Panmure Basin, the Monga, Mongaray, the Mount Wellington, also the incredible historic, not that well known, but should be Mokoia site, Ngāti Pawa's equivalent of Anzac Cove. Between these natural features and of course the incredible development features that are available for Panmure, the train station, the land that's owned between Crown and Council, the central Auckland location that it is, the presence of Tamaki Redevelopment Company in the area that you're going to be looking at today, and then market soundings that all look very favourable. And of course it's those sales from sites that will enable the all-important positive cash flow to do the unlocking that Panmure is very much capable of. I'd like to speak just very briefly to I think what is a need to see appropriate treatment of the convergence of projects. So you're here today to look at what Panmure and Panuku are planning on doing in a conjoint fashion, but there's also Tamaki Redevelopment Company and there's also Auckland Transport and their Amity project. So it's seen by some in the community. I know that Joe, and I want to acknowledge Joe at this point, Joe will know from community groups. Actually, isn't interesting, Joe? You're there, I'm here, the local board, Narissa and Chris, are here behind me, and between the three of us we've had some musical cheers, if I call it that, and Joe's doing an incredible job so far, and your future is bright, Joe. Looking forward to working with you. But Joe will know that there are some in the community that see the three, Panuku, Tamaki Redevelopment Company and Auckland Transport and the Amity project in three different fashions. And I'd like to suggest that we need to be very careful from the Panuku side of things that communication is clear and effective, and that the community don't continue to see things in three different packages, but in one. And I'd like to suggest that that one might be literally the term unlock Panmure. So I wonder whether there's scope, I know this might be wishful thinking on behalf of TRC and AT, to use the brand Unlock Panmure and for that to be seen as the one community-facing brand that's used. I know that some of what you will see today will help to have that one Panmure overall look. And I want to highlight three things that I think are going to be fantastic for the community. Addressing the lack of civic space, and your report talks to an anchor in Queen's Road, so incredibly important. Addressing weak connections between the town, the basin and the transport hub. There are currently not only weak connections, actual barriers, I think, to moving people around, walking, cycling, and getting between what are incredible landmarks. And the third is that given, and I think this is really beneficial, given how unique parts of Panmure are, that the labels that are being highlighted in your report, Transport Hub, Community Heart, Heritage Quarter and Commercial Quarter, do indeed continue to be used, because I think they have real merit. And not that labels always go well, but in this instance I think that they would, and bring back a sense of excitement for Panmure's future. Mr. Chair, I'm going to leave it there. It's general comments in support. I think that the staff, and they're to be congratulated, of Panuku have done really well in the journey to this point, and I look forward to your support, collective support, and appreciate the opportunity to speak. Thanks.
Thank you, Denise. It's entirely appropriate that you're here. You championed this when you were a councillor. It's now got to this juncture, and you will now continue to champion it as the MP for the area. It's just terrific. Really acknowledge your work before and ongoing. Thank you.
Thanks.
Questions of Denise, members? Thank you, Denise. Would somebody like to move acknowledgement of Denise? Councillor Simpson will. Councillor Collins will second.
Josephine, sorry.
Oh, sorry, I will. Do you mind if I, Councillor Collins, I'll take the councillor for the area, Josephine Bartley, as the second. Thank you. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, no. Declare that carried. I'll call for Christine once more. Is Christine here yet? No? Might just keep that open, members, for a little while. Councillor Lee, do you have
Probably
something?
held up in traffic.
Mr Chairman, I just came in when you were discussing who was to appear at public forum, and I'm aware of the 40 Anzac Road controversy, which we're going to discuss again today. I wonder, given we have a report here that sets out the Pamuku side of it, I wonder if you could explain why you won't allow representatives of the community with whom we're meant to be engaging with to speak here today.
Yeah, well, sorry, were you not here when I outlined
No,
that?
I was just coming in, so...
Okay. I'll go to our Chief of Strategy and get the... Waking up. And get the Chief of Strategy to answer that and explain the regulatory process that has been gone through and how we treat that regulatory process.
I think the simple answer is that the local board has a right for input at this point, and the other possible inputs have been gathered on the process until now. So, and they're reported to you in the report. So, it is just as sort of simple as that. It's appropriate, of course, for the local board to continue to have input.
I did hear, though, the chair make the point, the valid point, that the local board is part of the council. When it comes to legal action and all the rest of it, local board is constrained in regard to its powers to proceed against the council, because it is part of the council, whereas in all our reports we talk about engaging with the community as a separate entity, and I just wonder if, given we're having to make this difficult decision and it's also complicated by legal action, why we can't hear from that community.
So I'll just, I'll repeat it again. The motion as of November was to defer and have engagement with the board. That's what the motion was that we all voted on. I think it was actually unanimous. So we'd gone through the regulatory process, heard from the community, and we were going back by our own resolution to engage with the board. And we'll hear from our staff and the board very shortly. So look, Christine Rose is not with us. I might, if Christine does turn up before we conclude the local board input, I'm very willing to hear from Christine.